What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everyone's doing well out there today. We're talking about running backs that we're going to start and sit for Week 10 fantasy football. We got some bye weeks to worry about. We got a few bad fantasy backfields that just have really good matchups this week that are making things pretty difficult. The teams we have on bye. First, though, we have the Baltimore Ravens, so no Kenyon Drake. Sounds like Gus Edwards could be back after the bye week, though. That's something to pay attention to. The Cincinnati Bengals, so no Joe Mixon coming off his 5-touchdown performance. The New England Patriots, it's not Ramondre Stevens season this week. And then the New York Jets with Michael Carter and James Robinson on a bye as well. But like I mentioned, there's also a few teams that have some bad fantasy backfields that have really good matchups this week. We'll talk about them more in depth, but the Chicago Bears, the Kansas City Chiefs, Miami Dolphins, Indianapolis Colts, all some backfields with question marks that have some pretty good matchups here this week, but we're not wasting any more time. I have a jersey to give away. If you watched this show last week, you know that I was giving away a signed DeAndre Hopkins alternate black jersey. You can see the signature right there. Well, we have randomly selected a winner, and it is none other than CU Tiger 2180. Got a Clemson logo right there. So look at that. What are the chances that a Clemson fan, getting a jersey of a guy that went to Clemson? It's almost like it's meant to be. Congratulations, though. Once again, make sure you're staying tuned to all these episodes because we're giving away some fire here over the next couple weeks. But now is the time where we dive into the matchups, every player, every game, kicking off Thursday Night Football here with the Atlanta Falcons and Carolina Panthers. And how great is it to have Cordero Patterson back off of injury and back into your fantasy lineups? 53 total yards, didn't set the world on fire, but did have 2 touchdowns just last week on only 14 touches, but he was running strong and looked really good. Tyler Algier, though, looked pretty good, though, too. 123 total yards on only 11 touches. He looked better with Patterson in the lineup than he did at any point with Patterson not in the lineup. But those numbers aren't sustainable. That amount of efficiency right there is not something we can count on every single week from one Tyler Algier. But it was the drop in snaps that's something I really wanted to pay attention to. He only played in 23 snaps. That's the lowest he's played in quite some time. And it has to do with Cordero Patterson coming back and being the main member of this backfield. Now they have a matchup going up against the Carolina Panthers, who allow the 3rd most points to opposing running backs. Thank you to Joe Mixon in Week 9 and his 5-touchdown, 50-plus performance. Now they're averaging over 25.7 points per game to opposing running backs. Now center Matt Hennessy has already been ruled out. That's one injury of concern, and it's really hard to trust Tyler Algier going forward. We saw a very inefficient running back for multiple weeks here. I have to continue to rely on Cordero Patterson. He's the guy that I'm starting here this week. Their opponent, it's D'Onta Foreman. I mean, it felt like Carolina went down by like 21 points in a matter of minutes, and they could just never really rely on the running game the entire 4 quarters. He only had 7 carries for 23 yards and only played a total of 21 snaps. He also sat out pretty much the end of the game once they were absolutely getting blown out. There was no reason to have him out there, and that has something to do with the lower volume. Now, going up against Atlanta, they allow the 4th most points to opposing running backs at 21.5 per contest. The defense for Carolina kind of got roughed up a little bit, so we're hoping they can make it back this week on a short week and keep this game close. A close game means more D'Onta Foreman. That's what we're looking for here this week. Plus, we really don't know yet, is Chuba Hubbard going to be available this week? It sounds like there's an opportunity for that to be the case, but you have to think that D'Onta Foreman has earned that quote-unquote lead back role and is somebody who's definitely done the most with the amount of work he's seen here in Carolina. If I had to put somebody in there right now, D'Onta Foreman is the guy. He's more of a flex play at best, though. There is going to be that concern with Hubbard possibly back in the lineup, so just pay close attention to it. Plus, you got a quarterback carousel in Carolina once again. I don't know. The offense was looking horrible, then they were looking good, and then they look horrible again. It's just one of those teams, one of those years for Carolina, but D'Onta Foreman's going to remain a start. Let's kick it over to Sunday football, but not Sunday afternoon. We have Sunday morning with the Seattle Seahawks and Tampa Bay Buccaneers over in Germany. It'll be the first time I've ever watched a game in Germany, if I'm awake that early. I don't know if I'll be awake. Maybe I'll be awake that early to watch Kenneth Walker. This guy is a man on a mission. Do you realize he's only been a starter for 4.5 weeks this season? Half the year, yet he's still running back 16 overall, averaging over 19 fantasy points per game, and has 7 touchdowns in 4 games. Dude is absolutely carrying fantasy teams right now, averaging well over 20 touches a game. Now he's going up against Tampa Bay, who's allowed right on 16.4 fantasy points per game, which is 5th fewest in the NFL, but they've really benefited from not facing very many good running backs here as of late. No dominant run teams, kind of like we've seen with Kenneth Walker. No major injuries of concern in Seattle as of right now, but when you have the touches, you have the scoring opportunities, a minimal split in the backfield, and a ton of recent success, to me, that sounds like the perfect recipe of a running back you want to start in fantasy football. His opponent, Leonard Fournette. Regular season Lenny, playoff Lenny, fat Lenny, whatever you want to call him, is struggle bus Lenny. As of right now, he's currently still sitting at running back 9 overall on the season, but the last 3 weeks have been pretty bad. He hasn't had more than 60 total yards in a game in 3 weeks. Now, he's still averaging right around 18 touches a contest, but he hasn't had double-digit carries in those last 3 weeks either. Now they're going up against Seattle. They allow the 9th most fantasy points to opposing running backs at 21.8. There's just nowhere for him to run as of right now. The offensive line still pretty banged up. But even with the healthy pass-catching weapons on the outside, at times we saw Evans and Godwin and Julio all in the lineup, still couldn't find anywhere to run for Leonard Fournette. Now, we're already starting to see reports come out that, hey, there's an opportunity that Rachaad White could supplant Leonard Fournette. Okay, I understand that, but I'm not just automatically... It's not like Rachaad White is doing much better. It's not like we have a Zeke Elliott, Tony Pollard situation where every time Rachaad White touches the ball, he does something with it, so you got to give him more touches. He ain't doing crap either. So I'm not really buying the fact that they're going to say he's going to supplant Leonard Fournette. Sure, he could get some touches, but that's okay. We need scoring opportunities in this backfield. I'm not overly concerned about the touches. I'm really wanting the touchdowns from Leonard Fournette because that's what we've seen here the last couple years. The carries, the yardage, that'll all happen. Once this offense figures out what the hell is going on in Tampa Bay, playoff Lenny, regular season Lenny, fat Lenny, struggle bus Lenny, whatever you want to call him, is going to start scoring some more fantasy points for you. But the X factor, as of right now, dwindling by the week. He's just been too efficient, and he's not getting those solid touches or those scoring opportunities. Like I said, Tampa Bay overall, a mess. This is a gamble for sure, but he's almost too good to sit. My life, right? I mean, I want to start Leonard Fournette, but there is a risk involved with him here this week. How about now we go to the afternoon games? We got the Minnesota Vikings, Buffalo Bills. Started off with Dalvin Cook, currently running back 12 overall, not getting a ton of consistent yards, but he now has had touchdowns in 4 straight games, 5 out of his last 6, and the addition of TJ Hawkinson into this offense is a huge benefit to Dalvin Cook, the run blocking upside, the ability to have somebody else across the middle that defenses have to pay attention to pull defenders outside of the box. He's still averaging over 19 touches a game. Going up against Buffalo, they do allow the 9th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs, but that's at 18.4 fantasy points. Would you be okay if Dalvin Cook scored you 18 points this week? I think you wouldn't complain about it. No other major injuries of concern here, and the ceiling may not be what it once was with Dalvin Cook. Not those 30, 40-point games that we've seen in years past, but right now, the floor is proven to be fairly high and be a safe, consistent start for you each and every week. Plus, we know he has that opportunity to pop off and put up a huge number for you at any given time. This team is just so much better overall right now. There's more options in this offense with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and TJ Hawkinson. They have other opportunities to score touchdowns in this offense. So it's not just Dalvin Cook here, kind of like we've been used to on the ground the last few years, but obviously he's a start for you. Devin Singletary and Nyheim Hines for the Buffalo Bills. This is another below average week for Devin Singletary, who just doesn't see big enough volume. 3 yards per carry and 6 yards per reception just isn't going to cut it when you're getting less than 20 touches a ball game. Singletary's averaging only right around 13 touches a ball game right now, where Nyheim Hines in his first ever actual production as a Bill last week. Only saw 1 target, but I do expect that number to climb here over the coming weeks. Otherwise, why would they have traded for him if they already had James Cook? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Expect to see more Nyheim Hines over the coming weeks. Now, Minnesota, they allow right around 17.5 fantasy points per game, 6th fewest in the NFL, so a solid run defense there. But the big injury of concern here is Josh Allen. Could he miss time with this elbow injury? It's what everybody's really paying attention to as of right now. Plus, the defense also pretty banged up, and they're allowing more points than usual in Buffalo, which means they're not able to run as much because they're having to push the ball down the field. So you have a low-producing backfield in a situation where they may not have their starting quarterback. That's a problem, right? Because all of a sudden now maybe you want to rely on the running game a little bit more, but the defense knows that as well. And maybe that's where we see more Nyheim Hines in those check down passes. As of right now, until we get more information, both these guys going to remain a sit too risky for me. How about the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears? This one right here is tugging at the heartstrings right now because I love DeAndre Swift's talent, and I always want to have him in my lineup when he's on the field. But it's just obvious as of right now, he is just not healthy enough. Jamal Williams last week, 24 carries, 81 yards, no touchdowns. But Swift only had 5 total touches for 50 total yards. That is a big concern considering DeAndre Swift only played 10 snaps the entire game. 10. Not 10 in the first quarter, not 10 in the first half, 10 for the entire game. That's only a 16% snap share and not nearly high enough for what we need. Now, the Bears, they allow over 24 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, 5th most in the NFL. Remember, no more Roquan Smith. He made his debut in Baltimore, looked pretty solid there. Now, 4 members of the secondary are also hurt and questionable to play here, which means we could get in one of those situations where they're just having to throw the ball a lot in Detroit once again. Now, like I said, it's obvious that DeAndre Swift not 100% healthy, and that, like I said, pains my heart. As of right now, all of the numbers say that we shouldn't be starting DeAndre Swift. Everything is telling us that Jamal Williams is the better start in this backfield, and I'll agree with that. He is the safer start in this backfield for sure, but I don't know what it is about this matchup. I have a tough time sitting DeAndre Swift. Now, this is going to kind of be on a team-by-team basis. He's listed as a sit. My gut says that I want him to play, but it all depends on the options that you have. Make sure you watch our rankings later on in the week to kind of see where he slots, because right now it's so hard to sit DeAndre Swift. You can even see it. 5 touches for 50 yards, averaging 10 yards per touch. Once those touches increase, so will the production, and I hate to have that on my bench, but as of right now, there's just a lot of risks surrounding him, and we do not know exactly when those touches are going to increase. Maybe you have a gut feeling like I do. Maybe you want to throw him in your lineup. It's not a bad matchup to do so. The numbers just, they say otherwise, right? Their opponents, David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. This is one of those backfields that we were talking about as well that has a great matchup this week. That's an absolute train wreck, right? With David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. Because on one hand, you have the Chicago Bears, who average more rushing yards per game than any other team in the NFL at 195.4. But on the other side, we know that a lot of that is Justin Fields here over the past few weeks, right? It's this emergence of Justin Fields that's really taking away from David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert every single week. David Montgomery has only scored 10 plus fantasy points 1 time in the last month. Khalil Herbert's only done it 2 times in the last 6 weeks. Now they get a matchup going up against Detroit, who allows the 6th most fantasy points to opposing running backs at 23.9. This is a great matchup for these guys. We know there's still multiple offensive linemen banged up here in Chicago, but it's the commitment to this being a split backfield that is absolutely killing the fantasy value. One of these guys may be able to survive the rushing onslaught of Justin Fields, but both of them splitting touches, I don't see it right now. This is a huge weekly risk that's too up and down in this backfield. I love this matchup. This is a matchup that you want to start your running backs against, but which one do you choose? It's really eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Does either one of them find the end zone, or does Justin Fields just do it his damn self? And that's the biggest issue right here, and why both of these guys are listed as a sit, as much as I would like to throw at least one of them into my lineup. If I had to pick one, it would be Khalil Herbert and just hoping for that touchdown. How about the Jacksonville Jaguars? Kansas City Chiefs? We'll start off with Travis Etienne right now is just tearing up the league. He's all the way up to running back 11 on the year now, has had 3 straight games of over 100 yards rushing, and 4 straight with increased touches, and has 4 touchdowns in his last 3 games played. This guy is absolutely killing it. He's only averaging 16 touches per game on the year. However, over the last 2 games, over 27 touches a week. Now a matchup going up against Kansas City. They allow over 23 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, 8th most in the NFL. I'm taking my happy backside over to Prize Picks right now, and I'm smashing the over on 75.5 rushing yards for Travis Etienne. That is a number he has now beat in 4 straight ball games, and I believe he can do it again. No other major injuries of concern here, but his ability to catch passes out of the backfield is going to keep him on the field no matter what the game script is. Now, obviously, for our prize pick, I want it to be on the ground, but either way, this guy's going to find his way on the field and find a way to score you fantasy points. He is for sure going to remain a start. Their opponents, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Isaiah Pacheco, and Jerick McKinnon of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, another one of those situations. It's a decent matchup. The Jags allow over 21 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, 10th most in the NFL. But no running back in Kansas City last week had more than 5 yards rushing. 5 total for the game. McKinnon led the way with 9 total touches, but only turned that into 44 total yards. That doesn't sound very appealing to me. It's a stretch for either one of these guys to get 10 plus touches a week. Even though there's no major injury concerns, there's such a lack of consistency here. It is next to impossible to find out which one of these guys is going to get the opportunity at a touchdown. We're seeing a lot of Travis Kelce, Mecole Hardman around the goal line, and it's just vulturing the touchdowns from these guys going forward. As of right now, even though it's a good matchup, I don't see how you could trust any of them. They could have a huge game. They could carry you to victory, or they could completely suck and nothing in between. How about the Cleveland Browns and Miami Dolphins? Now we got the return of Nick Chubb. Welcome back, Chubby, off your bye week. Running back 3 overall right now in the NFL, averaging just at 20 touches per game and has 10 touchdowns so far on the season. Now don't forget also, right, there's a lot of rumors surrounding Kareem Hunt and could he be traded. He wasn't, and actually the game before the bye week, he touched the ball 15 times, which was the most he's had in a game since week 3. So they actually upped the usage of Kareem Hunt going into the bye week. Now they go up against the Miami Dolphins. They allow right around 20 fantasy points per game. 14th most in the NFL, kind of middle of the pack. Kind of hoping that guard Wyatt Teller is back in the lineup. Still questionable as of right now. But of course, there's always going to be that vultured touchdown concern with Kareem Hunt taking it away from Nick Chubb. But with the way that Nick Chubb is playing, there is no way that you can afford to sit this guy, and Kareem Hunt hasn't gone over 10 fantasy points in a game since week 1. He's just not a safe start as of right now. He may be at some point here, end of the season, maybe once Deshaun Watson returns, but as of right now, can't trust it. We're starting Chubby. How about Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. now? Another one of those situations where we have a backfield that I want to start, but I don't know which one to choose, right? Because the Cleveland Browns, they allowed 24.6 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, 4th most in the NFL. But we have a total 50-50 split in the backfield here of the Miami Dolphins. I mean, we see Jeff Wilson Jr. in his first ever game going out there and producing, scoring a touchdown right away, understanding the offense. Remember, they came from San Francisco. They kind of understand what Mike McDaniel is doing. His backfield mate, Raheem Mostert, his former teammate in San Francisco. This was an easy transition for Jeff Wilson Jr. And even though this is such a pass-heavy offense, there's still an opportunity for Jeff Wilson to be involved along with Raheem Mostert. We did see Jeff Wilson Jr. be more involved in the passing game this week than Raheem Mostert. Is that something to pay attention to going forward? Because one thing that I can say, in a pass-heavy offense like this in Miami, it's going to be very, very rare that these guys will consistently touch the ball 15 plus times a game. There's just not enough rushing volume to go around, which means they're going to become very touchdown dependent. And if they do not score, they do not help your fantasy team. Like I said, Cleveland is a great matchup for these guys. There's still some nagging injuries on the offensive line for Miami, but this total touchdown dependency, Even though I hate to sit either one of these guys in such a great matchup, because one of them could very easily go off, it would not surprise me if at the end of the week I see Raheem Mostert or Jeff Wilson with 20 plus fantasy points. But which one is it going to be? Because the other one could only score you 6. It's like playing the Powerball, right? And everybody out there trying to buy tickets and win bajillions, same type of situation here. Maybe there's only 2 people to choose from. Maybe your odds are better of picking the right one. Maybe that was a bad analogy, but you know what I'm talking about, because there's just no way to know each and every week who's scoring that touchdown. A huge headache. And as of right now, it's a 50-50 chance to pick the right one. For Houston and the New York Giants now, we got Dameon Pierce, running back 14 overall on the season, looked great against a solid Philadelphia Eagles defense last week. 27 carries for 139 yards, no touchdowns, now has at least 100 total yards in 5 of his last 6 games played, and he just crossed the blessed 20-plus touch per game mark, which means that pretty much makes you an automatic start in fantasy football. Now they're going up against the Giants, who are coming off their bye week. They allow the 7th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs at 18.3 per game, but we've seen Dameon Pierce go up against a difficult defense and succeed already this year. No other major injuries of concern here for Dameon Pierce. The volume and the yardage are really allowing him to not be touchdown dependent, kind of like we were talking about with Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. You get a guy like Dameon Pierce that can go out there and get 27 carries for 139 yards. Now, is 13 fantasy points absolutely a record-breaking day? No, but that 13 points didn't absolutely crater your team like it would if he scored 3 or 4, right? So definitely an advantage with him getting the amount of touches that he's getting and the yardage to go along with it. Kind of takes away a little bit of that touchdown dependency, because there's not a whole lot of that to go around in Houston. The touchdowns are basically bonuses nowadays, but we're obviously starting Dameon Pierce. But that'll take us down to his opponent now, coming back off the bye week, Saquon Barkley, currently running back 6 overall in fantasy football, averaging 18 fantasy points per game, but it kind of cooled off after a very hot start just before the bye. So hopefully this rest came at a very good time for Saquon Barkley to get a little bit of that juice back, get a little bit recharged, and end the season strong. He's also averaging over 20 touches a week. Now he's going up against Houston. Let me tell you this, Houston allows over 30 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, the most of any team in the NFL. They're also close to getting guard Shane Lemieux back, and maybe even Evan Neal. That's something to pay attention to as the week progresses, but this is kind of like the game that we hope for from our big stud running backs, right? A game against the Houston Texans with one of the best running backs in the league. Love some Saquon Barkley this week. Now we go down to New Orleans and Pittsburgh. Alvin Kamara. I really struggle with this because I don't seem to understand why some of the NFL coaches choose to do some of the things that they do each week. Now, the game last week, the New Orleans Saints were trailing the Baltimore Ravens majority of the game, yet Alvin Kamara got the fewest touches he's seen in a game since week 1. How does that make any sense? He's arguably their best offensive weapon if you really don't want to include Chris Olave, who is playing great, by the way, but Alvin Kamara is like option number 1, and the dude sees his lowest amount of touches in a game in which you're trailing. To me, that doesn't make sense. He's still averaging 20-plus touches a game on the season. Now he's going up against Pittsburgh, another middle-of-the-pack defense, who's still allowing right around 20 fantasy points per game. The offensive line just can't get fully healthy for the Saints, though. Center Eric McCoy, he's now questionable this week. It's just frustrating to me when a coach limits the upside of a player, because there's really nothing we can do about that. The stars could align perfectly, and the coach could go out there and just do something completely asinine and absolutely tank our fantasy. Why doesn't he care about our fantasy team? I'll tell you why. No NFL team cares about your fantasy team, but there's no way you can afford to sit Alvin Kamara. How about Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers coming off his bye week as well? And is everything going to be better now? I'm not going to hold my breath, right? Because we really haven't seen much from Najee Harris all year long. He's currently running back 28 overall, only averaging 9.4 fantasy points per game, and only has 1 touchdown since week 3. He also just had his first single-digit carry game of the season, something that's only happened to him twice in his NFL career, his young NFL career, but only twice so far in his young NFL career. Not surprising, I guess you could say that they were being teabagged by the Eagles at the time, so they didn't really rely on the running game anyway. He's still averaging 16.5 touches per game on the year. Now going up against New Orleans, they're 20th in the league against opposing running backs, averaging 19.3 points per game to that position. The defense still pretty banged up, but could once again be allowing more points. And if that's the case for the Pittsburgh Steelers and they find themselves behind, we don't see a whole lot of Najee Harris. But honestly, the New Orleans offense isn't some juggernaut, right? Maybe with Chase Claypool gone, coming off of the bye week, maybe they understand they really need to get this run game going. Maybe call this one a gut feeling, and that's why I bumped up the X factor here just a little bit for me. If there was ever a time for Najee Harris to right the ship, it would be this week coming off the bye week. He is a very risky low-end start for me here this week. Don't let me down, Najee. How about we move down to the Denver Broncos, Tennessee Titans, another backfield that is absolutely disgusting, but at least this is a difficult matchup and not too hard of a choice here. You got Melvin Gordon, Latavius Murray, and now Chase Edmonds. Don't forget, he was traded to Denver just before their bye week, but now coming off that bye week, what are we going to see in this backfield? It was already difficult to figure out anyway, and now we've added another piece to the puzzle. Full disclosure, I like Chase Edmonds in this offense at some point. Do I love it this week? I want to see how they utilize him first, but his skill set could definitely fit this type of offense, and I could see him eating the checkdowns here, multiple times throughout the game, even if they're trailing. If Russ can't find success down the field, Chase Edmonds could be that outlet guy that could rack up some receptions, but I kind of want to see it first. None of them are really going to be in line to get over 10 touches a game. Now they're going up against Tennessee. They allow the fourth fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs at only 16.3 per game. Another team whose offensive line pretty banged up. You got Cameron Fleming, Lloyd Cushenberry, which, always a fun name to say there, and Tom straight out of Compton, still banged up on this offensive line. They need some help, but there's still too many mouths to feed in an already unproductive backfield. Watch Chase Edmonds. Watch his usage. If he's getting good usage and they're already giving him a fair amount of snaps, that's a name to pay attention to late in the season. How about Derrick Henry? And even though there's no question here for Derrick Henry, I tweeted during the game in Week 9, with Tennessee having a lead late against the Kansas City Chiefs, they were not relying on Derrick Henry near enough to keep the clock moving. Henry only had like 11 carries going into the fourth quarter, and I was absolutely baffled, especially with Malik Willis under center. For the game, Derrick Henry only had 17 carries and no targets, which is only the second time this season that that's the case. Henry had 30-plus touches in 3 straight ball games. Had he touched the ball 30-plus times last week, I'm telling you, the Tennessee Titans would have beat the Kansas City Chiefs with Malik Willis as their quarterback. But that wasn't the case, right? When you don't run the ball, when you don't keep the clock moving, you give Patrick Mahomes extra possessions, and Patrick Mahomes beats you with those extra possessions. But now they're going up against the Denver Broncos. They allow over 20 fantasy points per game to running backs. No longer do they have Bradley Chubb on the defensive side of the football, and it's a lot easier to run on Denver than it is to throw on them. Do we have Ryan Tannehill back under center? If we do, I believe that actually helps Derrick Henry because we don't have Malik Willis taking away some of those rushing opportunities that maybe we saw on the Kings plate earlier in the season, but obviously it's Derrick Henry. He's going to be a start. How about the Indianapolis Colts and Las Vegas Raiders? Another backfield that is so irritating right now in Indianapolis. You got Jonathan Taylor and Deion Jackson. You also have a new coach in town in Jeff Saturday. Does that mean that they're going to unleash Jonathan Taylor and we're going to see what we saw last year? We kind of got to get him healthy first, right? Because right now, dude is still not healthy, and it's still unclear whether or not he plays this week as of right now. Now, last week, Deion Jackson didn't really do anything in his place, but that was a tough matchup. We kind of cautioned against that matchup in this show last week. Now, Jonathan Taylor for the year, still averaging 20 touches a game when he plays, but he's just not doing a whole lot with those touches. I do like that there's a former offensive lineman as the new interim head coach with Jeff Saturday. That's somebody who understands the offensive line, and this is an offensive line that is in desperate need of improvement. Now they're going up against the Raiders, who allow the 7th most fantasy points to opposing running backs at 23.7 per contest, but we know Jonathan Taylor isn't 100% healthy, and honestly, I want Matt Ryan back under center. I don't care who says anything different. You're entitled to your opinion, but this offense is not any better with Sam Ehlinger under center than it was with Matt Ryan. It was better with Matt Ryan, and even though it was horrible, it's still better than what we've seen over the past couple weeks. Now, obviously, if Jonathan Taylor is a full go in practice by the end of the week, he'll become a start for me here and not Deion Jackson. If Jonathan Taylor sits, then I will start Deion Jackson in a much better matchup and hope that he can rebound off of a difficult matchup from last week. Very risky. New head coach there. We really don't know what's going to happen in this offense as of yet. A lot of pieces could move places in the next few days, so really pay attention to this backfield. Their opponent's Josh Jacobs. Do y'all remember the good old days when Josh Jacobs was winning you matchups? Back when he had 3 straight weeks of 150 plus total yards. Now he's had less than 150 total yards in his last 2 games combined. He's still averaging over 20 touches a game, though. He's playing the majority of the snaps. They're just not going anywhere with them right now. The Colts, they allow 20.5 fantasy points per game, 15th in the league to opposing running backs. Darren Waller, still questionable. This offensive line, still banged up like every other team in the NFL. But it's really not getting enough attention here in Vegas. Is it just my opinion? For as bad as this team is playing, I don't feel like a lot of people are talking about it because too many people are talking about the struggles of Tom Brady or, Aaron Rodgers or Matthew Stafford. Like, people just aren't. It's like Las Vegas is kind of getting a pass right here for being as bad as they are. A total boom or bust offense. You saw that just last week. In the first half, they couldn't be stopped through the air. In the second half, they couldn't move the ball at all against Jacksonville. 2 up and down. As of right now, though, still have Josh Jacobs as a start. I don't know if you can really afford to sit him or his potential upside at any given moment. How about we go down to the Dallas Cowboys and Green Bay Packers now? And they're also coming off of their bye week. We once again may have the Tony Pollard show if Zeke Elliott can't play, even though we've already heard reports of Jerry Jones coming out saying that they expect Zeke to be back. That may not be the case because remember right before the bye week, Tony Pollard went slap off with 147 total yards and 3 touchdowns against the Chicago Bears. Now, typically when both these guys are in the lineup, Zeke's still going to dominate the touches, averaging right around 16 or 17 a game, where Tony Pollard's right around that 10, 11, 12 mark. But in the week before the bye, Tony Pollard did see 15 total touches when he was the man in that backfield. Now they're going up against Green Bay. They allow 20.6 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, 13th most in the league. Their defense also banged up a little bit. Kind of just waiting to see here what's going to happen with Zeke. A lot of medical opinions out there don't really feel like Zeke's going to be back this week and that Jerry's kind of just blowing smoke out there. Kind of need to wait and see. As of right now, Tony Pollard is the better and safer start in my opinion regardless. Even if we see Zeke Elliott play in this game, he'll be braced up on his knee and more than likely we'll see limited touches, making Tony Pollard the better start of the week here for the Dallas Cowboys. How about the Green Bay Packers though? Now Aaron Jones is still sitting at running back 10 overall despite a poor week 9 in which he suffered an ankle injury and left that game. He only played in 30 snaps last week, and when A.J. Dillon got a little bit more of an opportunity, didn't do anything with the touches either against the lowly Detroit Lions defense. Now, Aaron Jones on the season hovering right around 15 touches, Dillon a little bit closer to 10 or so, but this is not an easy matchup. The Cowboys allow the 3rd fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs at only 16.2 per game. Green Bay got pretty beat up in week 9. They lost Romeo Doubs. Christian Watson also questionable. Aaron Jones banged up. Luckily, the x-rays came back negative on Aaron Jones, and they're saying there's an opportunity for him to play this week. But how limited is he going to be in a very difficult matchup? We need more info on Aaron Jones. If he is practicing in full by the end of the week, I will bump up the injury number slightly and make him a start, but that's something we need to pay attention to. I don't want a limited running back in a struggling offense in a difficult matchup, if that makes any sense. So as of right now, I hope you're listening to this show and not just scrolling by and looking at the graphics and considering that research for your fantasy football team, because you may miss that point right there that if Aaron Jones is healthy, he's got to be in your lineup. How about the Arizona Cardinals and Los Angeles Rams now? And it pains me to say this, but the Arizona Cardinals may have one of the lowest producing backfields that I've probably almost ever seen on a pretty decent offense ever in fantasy football. They just cannot move the ball on the ground with this makeshift offensive line that they have. Now we're splitting touches between James Conner and Eno Benjamin. They're both going to hover right around maybe 10 to 12 touches per game. A matchup going up against the Rams. They allow 18 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, 8th fewest in the NFL. And like I said, that makeshift offensive line due to the injuries of Rodney Hudson, Max Garcia, Will Hernandez, they can't open up any holes, and they're not giving this offense an opportunity to run the ball successfully, which really pains me as a Cardinals fan. It's just this offense doesn't make a whole lot of sense a lot of the times, it seems like they're being too conservative. They're really just, trying to dink and dunk down the field instead of pushing the ball vertically with the weapons they do have, take those defenders outside the box and open up the running game, not just for James Conner, but even more for Kyler Murray. So kind of a headache here in this backfield, not one that I really want to deal with. And I can say the same thing about the Los Angeles Rams. It's another backfield I'm just not interested. There's no production by anyone here, and there hasn't been all year long. Hard for any of these guys to even get to 10 touches a game. Now they're going up against Arizona, not a bad matchup. They allow the 11th most fantasy points to opposing running backs at 21.5. Another team dealing with injuries on the offensive line. No commitment to just one guy. And now we could have an addition of another guy here really soon with Kyren Williams at some point. So no, I'm not tempting Darrell Henderson or Cam Akers either at this point. How about we move to Sunday Night Football, which is going to be my Manscaped matchup of the week. Don't forget, the holiday season is right around the corner. Get your significant other something here for the holidays. It's not just ball trimmers. They have this amazing weed whacker thing that takes care of ear hair and nose hair. They got body wash and shampoo and boxer briefs and lip balm and deodorant. I could continue to go on and on and on. They have something for everyone. Just make sure you head over there to manscaped.com after this show is over. Use the referral code Headliners at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. But in this matchup, we have Austin Ekeler versus Christian McCaffrey. Going to be fun to watch. On one side, you got Austin Ekeler, the current #1 running back in all of fantasy football, and really no reason for that to slow down anytime soon here with no Keenan Allen or Mike Williams. He's averaging over 20 touches per game. Even though this isn't the greatest of matchups, I will say that San Francisco is the toughest team to run on in all of the land, allowing only 14.8 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. But most of the injuries here in LA actually benefit Austin Ekeler because it's just going to mean he gets more volume. San Francisco, I expect to score in this game, which means they're going to be playing catch up in LA, chucking the ball down to Austin Ekeler. Hopefully, he can find the end zone a time or two. He's the best option they have on offense, and he's going to be a start for Christian McCaffrey. He's coming off the bye week and ready to explode again. Don't forget, in that game before the bye week, he ran for a touchdown, caught a touchdown, threw his own touchdown, and now he's running back 5 overall in the season, averaging 19 touches per game, but could easily cross that 20 touch mark here this week because they're going up against the Chargers. And the Chargers allow the second most fantasy points to running backs of any other team in the league at 27.7 per game. I'm actually going over to Prize Picks once again. I'm going to smash the over of 75.5 rushing yards on Christian McCaffrey. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for Prize Picks yet, use referral code Headliners. When you do so, all you have to do is make a $10 deposit. We'll match your deposit all the way up to $100 there for new accounts. So come have some fun with us, making some money on Prize Picks here this week. Now, when it comes to injuries, Deebo Samuel still questionable. The defense still dealing with multiple injuries there as well, to the likes of Jason Verrett, Dre Greenlaw, Eric Armstead. Elijah Mitchell was also designated to return. Does that mean that he plays this week? And I'm not worried about him just yet, but he is getting closer as well. But Christian McCaffrey does all of it. Now, if Deebo does play, it could limit the ceiling a little bit, but this offense is going to be very explosive, and it's going to score a lot of points. We're not sitting Christian McCaffrey ever, right? We already know that. All right, Monday Night Football now. The Washington Commandos and Philadelphia Eagles. For Washington, it's just another head-scratching backfield here as of late. Right now, both these guys are getting decent touches, but they're not doing anything with them. They both saw 13-plus touches and nothing to do with them in Week 9. It's still apparent that this is going to remain close to a 50-50 split in this backfield. We just saw Dameon Pierce go up against this Philadelphia Eagles defense and rush for over 130 yards. But I hate to break it to you, neither one of these guys are Dameon Pierce, and neither one of these guys are going to get 27 touches like he did, even though there's no other major injuries of concern. Just not enough touchdowns to go around in this offense. We know with Taylor Heineke under center, he wants to push the ball deep down the field, not rely on the dink and dunk running game as much. So neither one of these guys are going to interest me in Monday Night Football. For Miles Sanders, he just continues to be a solid running back 2 on the season, currently running back 15 overall, coming off a game in which he had 93 yards and a touchdown in Week 9, averaging right around 17 touches per game, going up against Washington, who allows just under 20 fantasy points per game. No other major injury concerns here. We know the Eagles are playing good football, and even though the ceiling remains lower, the floor is pretty freaking safe. If it wasn't for Jalen Hurts stealing some of these goal line touchdowns throughout the year, we could be looking at top 12 Miles Sanders, but top 15 nonetheless, and still a weekly start. All right, so there you have it, my starts and sits for the running back position here, Week 10 fantasy football. Hopefully I was able to give you all the information you need, because that's what this is all about, right? That's the purpose of this show, is to give you the information you need to make the best decisions possible for your team. A lot of people out there just looking for answers, but if people are giving you answers, they're just selling you a bunch of crap because they don't know your league settings. They don't know your entire roster. They don't know what your record is. They don't know how far out of first you are. They don't know about your opponent's matchup for the week. There's so much unknown there that we're just trying to give you all the information you need to make the best decisions possible and really go out there and win and dominate at fantasy football here in 2022. So if that's what you're looking for, you found the right spot. Maybe you're a little bit late to the party, but don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We're here year round, so make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, the like button if you enjoyed the content. But I'm going to get out of here for the day. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day, a great week, and we'll talk to you later.